Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. Season 2 has 4 episodes left. Shall I foreshadow the end? With only 4 episodes to go, Blister can't afford to waste any time. Somehow he must block the bell tower from wharf rat scavengers once and for all. He must fortify Muck's newfound independence, and therefore prevent the Silver Whisker from joining his family in Europe. And let's not forget that Blister also needs to alert the Lady Yana that Dr. Van Sangfreud is pirating her new technology to carry out his own evil schemes. And Blister must formulate his own schemes to upend the wicked doctor without getting himself implicated as one of the bad guys. Blister's problems are straightforward. He must proceed perfectly, that is to say, without any unforced errors. As you may recall, last week Blister and Madame Putresca paid a visit to Orville Whitmore, the zoo's director. Blister discovered a photograph of the Lady Yana in Orville's study. Then Orville revealed that he also had a picture of Dr. Van Sangfreud. Furthermore, he insisted the doctor was the world's leading animal expert. And if that wasn't enough, he was Orville's hero. How can a cruel, animal-trapping and zapping scoundrel inspire a kind and chivalrous zookeeper? Whatever happens in the next 4 episodes, I think it's become clear that we are entering the unforeseen. Don't place any bets on the outcome of Season 2, dear listeners. I forbid it. Episode 15, True Love.
Animal expert?
Blister spluttered.
Do animal experts go around blasting animals to death?
Dr. Van Sangfreud didn't shoot animals for sport. He shot them for science. To study them. Orville Whitmore returned the photo to the wall. This was before we scientists had zoos in which to study live specimens. Back then, if you wanted to study a savage beast, if you wanted to know its inner and outer workings, then you had to prepare it for autopsy and preserve it in your lab.
Grouse,
Blister said, his insides suddenly as gritty as the sugar in Fleet's mouth. I always wanted to work with animals, ever since I was a little boy. Deep were my desires, and great were my ambitions. I begged my parents to take me to any and every public lecture. Once I'd heard Van Sangfreud speak on his theories of animal behavior and instinct, I begged my parents to have me apprenticed to him. I went to live and study with Dr. Van Sangfreud. I ran his errands. I completed all the grunt work of his research, drawing diagrams, filing papers, typing his notes. I traveled with him on expeditions to gather specimens. Over time, I became a sort of son to him. Orville paused, then said, and over time, I fell in love with his daughter, and she with me. We were engaged. Blister and Madame Putresca gawked. Even Fleet stopped grinding the sugar cube in his mouth.
Van Sangfreud is having a daughter? You are married to Yana?
Blister spluttered. How could someone like Orville Whitmore live in that scaly, mealy junk castle? How could Blister have been there so many times and never seen Orville coming or going? Maybe he stayed in the basements with the servants? Or maybe he lived at the townhouse on Atramental Avenue? Orville reddened. I said we were engaged.
Oh,
Blister said.
so when's the lucky day?
Orville's expression puckered. He wadded his fists and crammed them in his trouser pockets as he paced the room. Gone are the lucky days from my life, Blister. They are not among the samples on my plate any more. I have good days and bad days. That is all.
You mean she threw you over?
Putreska cut in.
Poor Orville. All this time I was knowing you. I was never knowing this. I am so sorry.
She sharpshootered one eye at Blister. Her likeness is there. Orville pointed to the framed picture on the table near Blister's chair. I saw how taken you were with that photo, Blister. And for good reason. She is bewitching. In looks, she took after her mother, a famous actress. But in all else, she took after her father. Jana van Sangfreud wanted to study at university. She would have made dunces of all her classmates, had the world not frowned on such things as women obtaining higher education. Since then, history has smiled on a few exceptions. But, on the whole, it simply is not done. Colleges and universities reject all female applicants. Jana's own father would not let her go. Indeed, I was probably the only man who would have allowed it. In fact, I would have forced her to go. But one day, she sent a letter breaking off the engagement to care for her ailing father. She couldn't possibly marry and leave him. A few days after that, every letter I ever wrote to her was returned to me in a bundle. Months after that, she wrote me one last time to say she was engaged to another. Orville propped his arm on the mantel over the fire. His head slumped into his hand, as if the weight of all the hair on his head and cheeks had finally subdued his neck. He asked, "Do you know why there isn't a single definitive volume reliably outlining the female half of the human species? Because it is an impossible scientific task. Women make absolutely no sense. Large was the crowbar I would have used to pry open the doors of any institution that rejected my beloved Jana, and yet she rejected me." Putreska frowned. Fleet lowered his head and silenced his sugar-smacking. Blister looked sympathetically at Jana's picture and wondered how she could have ever looked so radiant when her goals were so unjustly blocked. After a time, Putreska asked,
Orville, what can you be telling us about Dr. van Sangfreud's theories? Specifically, I am wondering if he ever was writing about fixing the flaws of mankind.
Orville pried himself from the mantel. The flaws of mankind? He returned to his chair and took up his teacup. Jan van Sangfreud did not believe mankind was flawed. He believed, as Darwin did, that man is just another type of unfinished animal, a highly evolved animal that traded its place in the kill or be killed wilderness for the wilder and more savage jungles of logic. Jana was the one who supposed that this exodus from nature endowed man with his greatest flaws and weaknesses. Orville sipped his tea. Then a chuckle escaped. I just remembered. She wrote the cutest little essay, theorizing that all brains run on electricity. That the brain shoots tiny bolts of electricity down through the muscles to make them move. That thoughts were pools of electric energy. Knowledge was electricity stored, like in batteries. She went so far as to suggest that a particular kind of electric device could be used to transfer the energy of those batteries between creatures. But you know what they say. All geniuses are partially mad. Orville practically giggled. My darling, little mad scientist. He sighed and sipped more tea. Blister recalled the leather basket hat Yana strapped to his head and the sparks that squirted into the big glass jar when his thoughts were most powerful. He suddenly experienced a strong urge to get back on that machine and help her finally realize her grand ambitions. He wanted to help her prove how smart she was. But in that same instance, his feelings split, much like the hands on a clock. Rather than stepping in unison, the hour hand lags behind while the minute hand marches on, and the second hand sprints. Blister detected doubt digging in its heels and lagging behind the steady tick of his enthusiasm. Pardonne-me, Dr. Whitmore, but I think you should be careful. Fleet spoke up now that his sugar cube was all gone.
Fleet is being right, Putreska said. I have every reason to be believing that Dr. Van Sangfreud stole the rhinoceros from your zoo, and that he is likely to be stealing other animals soon.
Impossible. Orville Whitmore shook his head with enough force to free some curly tendrils from their pomade prison. He crossed the study and began rummaging through a desk drawer. I knew you suspected the old doctor as soon as you questioned my connections to him, but your hypothesis is insupportable. Dr. Van Sangfreud is dead. I believe I have a letter. Aha, right here. He brandished the folded sheet of paper overhead. Putreska took the letter, adding her own, "Impossible." Blister leaned over the arm of the chair to read along. The letter was from Yana, dated several years ago. She simply stated that her father had died. She demanded Orville not send any flowers because she was not going to arrange a funeral, just a private burial.
But we were seeing him at the circus, weren't we?
Blister nodded.
He even introduced himself as Dr. Van Sangfreud.
I think we are dealing with an imposter,
Fleet said. Orville gunned his index finger at the giant tortoise. Now here is a scientific mind at work, deducing based on logic. Very good, Fleet. Would you like another sugar cube? Fleet nodded.
Sí, por favor.
Orville plucked a white cube from the bowl and tossed it. Fleet snapped his beak-like mouth, and the white cube disappeared. To the rats, Orville said, "The trouble with evidence is that it tempts us to make assumptions. You see a gentleman who says he is Dr. Van Sangfreud, and you assume he is telling the truth. Never assume, either of you." Orville paused to marble his eyes from Putreska to Blister. Never assume you know what someone else is about. Our speculations will almost always be wrong, or at the very least, incomplete. Plenty of people assumed Van Sangfreud was crazy throughout his life. They mocked his theories. They laughed off his notions. They failed to see, just as you did, that deep down inside, he held a true love for all animals. I believe having the truest part of ourselves go unseen for too long can wreak disastrous results. Which is what happened to poor old Van Sangfreud. He withdrew from the world and confined himself to his residence on Tenebrous Hill, where he slowly descended into a quiet kind of madness. Often were the times I wanted to go there and visit him. I worried that with Yana married and gone, he had been abandoned. But I never worked up the courage to go there. And then this letter arrived. Orville tapped the sheaf of paper in Putreska's paws. No funeral to honor his great life and works. Not even an obituary to announce his passing in the newspapers. Profound is the sadness I feel that a man so great can fall so low." A statement and a question burned in Blister's mouth. He skipped over the statement, namely telling Orville that Yana still possessed the Tenebrous Hill estate. Instead, he asked,
Hey, Orville, did the old doctor have any relatives? Any, I don't know, twin brothers?
Orville readily shook his head. No brothers, twin or otherwise. No cousins living. He was very much alone. Yana's mother died while touring Europe. Her carriage flipped, I believe. Yana may have been 7 when she became the only family Jan van Sangfreud had in the whole world.
"We have been taking up too much of your time, Dr. Whitmore."
Putreska set aside her cup and forward flipped off Fleet's back. "No, it is I who should be thanking you for your time, madam." Orville knelt before her and entreated her paw to his finger. As before, he placed there a gentlemanly kiss, delivered a farewell bow to Blister, and escorted them to the door. "Firm is my belief that you are right about one thing, madam. I must be careful, for I feel my zoological preserve is likely to be targeted again."
"I trust you will use every precaution in your power to be protecting the animals,"
Putreska said. Orville nodded solemnly and closed the door to his study. Back out on the zoo grounds, Fleet followed Putreska and Blister along the foggy walkways.
"Well, somebody is sure knowing more than they are sharing,"
Putreska said. Blister perked up.
Really? You think he's lying? I thought so too. Immediately. So obvious. I was never drawn into that ridiculous sob story. I saw right through.
"Blister,"
Putreska cut in.
"how were you knowing Dr. Van Sangfreud's daughter was being named Yana?"
Orville said so.
No, he didn't,
Fleet said.
You called her Yana before Orville did.
Fleet is being the best listener. This is why I am asking him to be here. So, Blister, how were you knowing?
Putreska pressed. Blister's heart frothed. Had he really made such a ghastly mistake? He couldn't recall the details.
I am certain I did not say her name first, but even if I had, it would only make sense, wouldn't it? Yana. Of course that would be her name. How could it be anything else?
Aha. Putreska's mouth kinked into a skeptical grin.
Rest assured, either you will tell me the truth or your wrists will. You two go ahead without me. There are other creatures I want to check on.
After Putreska was gone, Fleet advised.
Cuidado, Blister. If you know anything, you should speak up.
When have I ever kept a secret from Madame Putreska? I tell her everything I know. Full disclosure. You can count on it.
Words tumbled from Blister's mouth. The more they piled up, the safer his secret seemed.
Speaking of counting on things, can I count on you for something, amigo?
Of course,
Fleet said.
Good. You said I should come to you with questions, and I do have one. I'd like to know who's in charge of Putreska's mail. My buddy Muck is expecting a telegram, a really important telegram from Europe.
The ferrets and weasels see to the mail. But I don't think...
Could you tell them to direct any correspondence from Europe to me? You see, the news coming for Muck isn't good news, and because he's my pal, I know he'd receive it better from me. You understand, don't you, Fleet? If you were going to get really bad news, wouldn't you want it coming from your bestest best friend, and not just anyone?
See, I understand. That is thoughtful of you.
Isn't it? So you'll do this one tiny, itty-bitty little favor for me? Thanks a million, Fleet. And, no need to tell Madame Putresca. She already knows. I talked to her about it on the way over here.
Fleet nodded.
Muy bien.
Say, amigo, how about you show me that shortcut you used to get here?
Blister patted Fleet's neck. And just like that, 4 episodes dropped to 3. Blister really needs to get it together. He's now scamming Fleet and tampering with the mail to keep Muck away from Europe. And evidently, Dr. Van Sangfreud is dead, which means that if Orville is right, our heroes are tracking down an imposter. Or they're chasing a ghost. Tune in next week to find out if Blister makes any progress on all his mystery solving, or if more trouble turns the whole situation into a 3-for-all. In the meantime, you can stop by blisterandmuck.com, where I've compiled a nifty collection of resources all centered around numbers. Scary numbers, imaginary numbers, and numbers you may even fall in love with. While you're at the site, you can use the contact form to tell me what you think is going to happen between now and the Season 2 finale. Got any good theories? Or should I say, 3-rees? Know any good number jokes, better or worse than this one? What did the number 0 say to the number 8? Nice belt. If you dare to share a joke, I'll share it on the show and give you a shout-out. You'll never miss an episode when you subscribe to the podcast at blisterandmuck.com. Simply scroll to the bottom of the website and tap the orange subscribe button. Wait, what? I expect you to scroll? Like, with your own fingers? Yes, I believe in you. And scrolling down a little sure beats an annoying pop-up whenever you visit the site, right? And if your fingers still have any strength left, please tap the Support the Show option where you can support the show. Either make a donation using the secure PayPal button or dive into the Blister and Muck gift shop and select a bangin' t-shirt, hat, tote, or face mask. A portion of every purchase helps cover the costs of web hosting, music, and sound effects. Plus, you'll receive a secret surprise from the entire Blister and Muck crew included with your gear. You also support the show whenever you tell your friends and social media influencers about it. And I have to say, you listeners are doing a fantastic job with this support because Blister and Muck keeps climbing the best of podcast charts. We recently hit Apple Podcasts' top 200 list. We're ranked 173 for Stories for Kids. So truly, thank you for sharing your love for this show. Special thanks to Roland Rudzitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional public domain music from John Bartman, Mon Plaisir, Kevin MacLeod, and Komiku. ST303 made the clock tick. Nom Fundo K slurped the tea. Electrical bleeps from That Jeff Carter. Ambient outdoor sounds from Kyle's. I am always grateful for my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.